And next up we have Moonlight Banishes Shadow, the Infinite World, book number 3 by J.T. Wright. And my brain, I sometimes switch those letters for some reason. It's 508 pages, $2.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Feeling unwanted and still reeling from his encounter in the Guardian of Clarity, Trent Embra leaves the city to find out what else the world has to offer. Making his own decisions for the first time, an adrift Trent latches onto the quest and is saddest, telling him to survive alone in the wilds for 2 weeks. With only the doctrine of Sergeant Cullen to guide him and a sword to depend on, Trent puts his back to the Aldrosford and heads out to find out how different life as an adventurer is compared to the one he has been leading. And that's it. And that's literally what this is. It's a very simple concept. But it kind of gets back to its roots in book number 1. In book number 1 in the series, it's this massive, story of like over 1,000 pages. Oh, right. Well, it's about 1,000. It's a big story though. And it's like over 500, just like this one is. And it tells the story of the main character being summoned to a fantasy RPG world without a memory as a summon. Somebody with someone's like a monster to fight for you. And as he progresses and learns and fights, it's revealed exactly how amazingly rare he is as an individual, and he goes through dungeon diving and training and exploring, and that's kind of the core gem of the story. There's also like good bit of world building and character development, but at its core, it's kind of a dungeon dive story. And in book 2, the story shifts a little bit from that, in that its main focus is essentially to get the main character away from the cloistering storyline and ties to the government and cities that had been kind of developed in book number 1, and give him a chance to essentially go on more adventures and dungeon dives. And that is fulfilled in book number 3. The main character returns to his solo adventuring and small party dungeon dives and leaves behind all those larger politics from books 1 and 2. They still exist to a degree, but they're more like world building elements at this point. The main character definitely is on his own for like almost the entirety of the story, either on his own or in a small group dungeon diving. And again, there's still development of those other parts of the story, world building in Aldrosford, or like the development of I forget the name of the tribe that he had met in book number 2. But there's still a minimum of those other key characters that are hopefully going to be, coming back at some point in the series. But for book 3, again, it returned to that core action, adventure, character development, the coming of age ish kind of story, which is like the key to this main character that I think a lot of the readers really just loved and enjoyed. And that for me made it a great story. Trent's self-discovery is a little bit muted as far as like his developing his mind or his powers, or the case. His power leveling and his skill building is absolutely great, but he really just kind of comes to like 1 or 2 major conclusions about his own personality and mind development. But a lot of it is still tied to these dungeons, and he does dungeon dives, and the action is great, and his development with other characters is great. Well done. The author resets, I think. One of the things that bugged me personally in book number 1 was kind of the characters he ended up grouping with. And in book 1 and 2, and that is absolutely reset, I think, in a very nice way. And the main character gets a chance to reset those groups and has a new group of characters. And I think it works well for the most part. Some character traits repeat a little bit as far as like group roles. But for the most part, I think it's still a much better group setting than what had happened in kind of group in book number 2. Game mechanics are well done. Nothing really new here. As far as like new systems or new abilities, the main character still levels, and I see those nice class opportunities and skill opportunities or other opportunities, and so all that stuff still exists. Overall, I think the story is great. I practically devoured this story in one setting, and I stayed up until like the late hours of the morning to finish the adventure. I enjoyed it that much. And I absolutely don't regret a single moment of lost sleep. This is a great story, and I don't use the word lightly. It gets a score of 8 out of 10. I've given 2 books in this series 8s out of 10s, books 1 and 3. Book 7 got something in the middle. And it's been an enjoyable thing. It's one of my favorite series, and I was super stoked when I saw it come out. I was like, oh yeah, I get to read this story, and I really enjoyed it. Moonlight Banishes Shadow, The Infinite World, book number 3, gets a score of 8 out of 10. I thought it was great.